Podcasting is more than just talking. It's listening. BSing with Bob Schmidt.
The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast featuring entrepreneurs, business people, and marketers. This week, talking with David Ciccarelli. David is the CEO of Voices.com, and as a voiceover person myself, it's pretty cool to be able to talk to the guy that's in charge of probably the largest place to go to get voices. David, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much, Bob. Glad to be here and happy to tell some stories.
So how did you get into the whole voiceover gig?
Everyone kind of finds their own path, and mine is pretty unique, actually. I grew up fascinated with sound. You know, I often share about how Mom had an old record player and Dad had this shortwave radio, so I always kind of tinkered with audio technology, if you could call it that. Went to school and got a degree in audio engineering. Then I opened up a small recording studio. So this was an opportunity where I recorded music, bands and so forth, but I actually got my name in the newspaper on my birthday, and actually that article brought in some local businesses that were looking to have a female voiceover recorded done for a phone system. And I'd actually met a young woman just the day before who was a classically trained singer. And that lady's now Stephanie is now my wife and co-founder of Voices.com. But at the time, she was a classically trained singer. But I asked her to do these voiceovers, and so she did a phone system and some local radio commercials. And that was the aha moment, as I refer to it, of wow, instead of us doing the production, why don't we become the connector between the voice actor and the client that's looking to hire them? And so we got out of doing the production ourselves and really reinvented ourselves as this marketplace that connects the businesses with those voice actors. And that's what we've been doing for much of the last decade.
David, how did you score the name Voices.com?
We actually didn't start as Voices.com. We began as Interactive Voices, which wasn't exactly the greatest website name. Kind of pigeonholed us into new media or interactive media. It was around the height of what was then the Web 2.0 movement when, everything was big, bright, and bubbly on the web, flashy colors, and companies like Twitter and Flickr were like dropping vowels from their name. And so we wanted to be part of this movement. So we were set on changing, rebranding, in effect. So I did what many entrepreneurs do. You pull up a browser, you Google the domain name of your choosing or of your desires, and we had landed on a website called, it was a medical journal called Silencing the Critical Voices in Your Head. It was a medical journal that hadn't been updated since about 2000, and so we reached out actually through a lawyer, sent an email to this owner, and asked, would he sell the name, and if so, what price? And he came back and he said, initially said $50,000, and then, through some negotiation, offered 6 payments of $5,000 kind of every quarter. Every 3 months, we'd send him another $5,000, and for that, he went for the deal. So we were able to almost like lift and shift our business from the old servers to the new servers and redirect all that traffic. That's been actually, Bob, one of the biggest turning points for us. It was a name that is short, it's memorable, it's easy to spell. It kind of says what we do in a nutshell. So it's been really great from that standpoint.
So how does something like Voices.com work for the end user? So let's say I have a business and I want to get a voice. I'm looking for a male voice and a female voice. Can I use Voices.com to have auditions with different voices, or how does it even work? The
process is very simple. You sign up for free and you create an account. And if most clients, what we call clients, those people who are looking to hire a talent, they have that project in their mind. And so, after signing up, you can do what we call posting a job. So it's free to post the job. And that is where you outline, just as you said, I'm looking for a male voice and a female voice. I might have obviously a particular language. So in this case, English. We allow you to pick the accent even, because there's certain regions that have maybe thicker or stronger accents than others. You can go through and pick the age range, the style of performance, maybe the particular role, if you want a superhero or a sports announcer or a villain, a corporate executive. I mean, this helps the actor ultimately deliver auditions for the persona that you want to have, perform the voice. And then, of course, you attach your script. What do you want? Auditioned. Usually even a couple sentences is fine. You pick a budget, which is somewhere between, starts at $100 to $250 and kind of goes up depending on the duration of the recording and the complexity of the recording itself. And then your deadline. When do you want your auditions back?
It sounds kind of like a dating profile or a dating service for voices.
Audio is a really challenging medium because there's often not a shared language or lexicon for how we describe what we want. We know it when we hear it, but what kind of words, are people using? We've seen some really funny artistic, what we call artistic direction or creative direction. A client will say, "Oh, we want somebody to sound taller." Well, what does that mean? I mean, from the days in radio and voiceover yourself. You get these conflicting messages of, we want you to sound, professional, but also sarcastic and humorous. Well, it's like, okay, well, where's that line? My favorite all time, though, is somebody wanted to sound more purple. And I think that, I'm like, is it more passionate? Is it, goofier? Like, what does purple sound like?
Well, it's probably a Minnesota Viking fan because, they're purple,
exactly.
So that's probably part of it.
Or Barney the Dinosaur for, 1990s reference. But nonetheless, that is why that job posting is such a critical part, because it provides a common understanding for what the client is looking for, and then the artistic direction for how the talent is supposed to interpret this and deliver initially a great audition in hopes of landing the job, but then it also serves as the basis for, here's what we want you to sound like.
David Cicerelli, CEO of Voices.com. One of the big questions I have as a voiceover talent myself, trying to break into the business, is how do I get my stuff out there? I've got a tape that I did. Well, it's not tape anymore; it's digital. But I've got, I've got some projects that I've done. I put them together, I strung them together like I used to back when I was looking for a radio job, but I don't know how to go about taking what I have now and putting it out on something like Voices.com.
So after that initial acting classes that you've taken, often the deliverable at the end of that, or the culminating event, is recording a voiceover demo, as you said. Sometimes it's referred to as a demo reel, REEL. So however it's named, it's an audio file, usually an MP3, that is a montage of a number of spots or ads. That is what's necessary, because when someone searches on Voices.com, they want to hear samples that are as close to their project that they have in mind. I mean, a bit of a silly example, but if someone's producing a phone system and they've said, "Oh, I need to update my phone system greetings," you're not going to send them a monster truck rally commercial, because it's going to miss the audience, and the styles is all wrong. So, ultimately you end up with this portfolio, if you will, of a number of demos for each of those major categories. And those can be uploaded onto Voices.com, again, completely for free. So we have a free account, or you can upgrade to a premium membership. But really, creating a great profile and uploading those demos, which can all be done for free, is the absolute best first step in terms of practical, what can I do to help market myself on a platform like this today.
David Cicerelli from Voices.com joining us this week on the BS with Bob Schmidt podcast. So the next question I have, I guess, is the talent then in charge of doing the editing and breaking down the commercial and putting the music behind it and all that, or does that go to somebody else for post-production? Yeah,
great question. So most of the reads and the voiceovers that are done are it's a bit of jargon here, but it's what's referred to as a dry read, meaning there's no additional processing or music that's being mixed in. Some clients may ask for that, but usually in most cases, they just want the voiceover as a clean file with no extra attention done to it. And that, some clients may ask for breaths to be edited out. That can be a lot of extra work. Oftentimes, though, it's as I say, it's a clean read where it sounds as natural as possible. The editing out of breaths we don't see as much done anymore, but what is required is a clean recording with no kind of background noise. and then the end producer, whether it's a curriculum designer at Microsoft putting together a series of corporate training videos or product demonstration videos, they're probably going to have their own music selections on their back end. And so they would be making those choices.
What about the different quality of voices? I mean, not voices, but the different quality of studios, because I know that my studio sounds different than your studio. It sounds different than Johnny down the street studio. How do you go about matching or coming up with the right sound for the specific client?
One of the memorable phrases was "trust your ears." And that's why we tend at Voices.com to encourage our clients, whether they're a creative producer that is hiring voice actors all the time, or perhaps a small business that's just getting their phone system greetings done, a voicemail and some on-hold messaging, to ultimately trust their ears. Now, some of these projects, let's say, may much more high stakes or going to air on radio and TV. Other ones are not going to be seen by a huge audience. And so, as I say, that's why that audition step is so important, because you actually hear the quality of the recording that's going to ultimately be delivered. So that's really my best advice there, is if it sounds good to you, and not necessarily just listening through your computer speakers, maybe plug in some headphones. Make sure it still sounds good. Close your eyes when you're listening. And if you can listen critically like that and it sounds good to you, maybe circulate that or socialize it, if you will, that audition that you're thinking of working with, that talent that you're thinking of working with. See what other people think, and it can be a very collaborative process. And if it sounds good to most people, it's in your inner circle, if you will, it's probably going to sound good for the ultimate intended audience.
So, are most of the jobs that are booked through Voices.com, are they 30, 60-second commercials, or are they narratives or book on tape, or what type of job is most booked through Voices.com?
The most popular job is the 1-minute explainer video. You've probably seen these on YouTube, and a lot of people don't realize, YouTube is the number one educational website in the world. It has the most educational content, which is really full of how-to videos and tutorials. It's also the number 2 search engine after Google itself. And so there is this thirst from marketers and brand marketers or product marketers to create content that is relatively short form, that can educate and inform and sometimes even entertain those audiences. And the 1-minute video seems to be kind of the gold standard format, where you can tell enough of a story, but also deliver some value in exchange for why somebody would want to spend a minute of time watching this. So from existing products and services explaining how they work, often we'll see, whether it's on Indiegogo or Kickstarter or GoFundMe, a video particularly on Kickstarter, for an upcoming product. This is a really low-cost way to try to test out a market, to see, hey, I can create a product demonstration video of what I'm thinking of building. We see a lot of those, so that they're all kind of the same format, though. A 1-minute video that explains a product or service and how it works.
David Ciccarelli, also the author of a book, Voice Acting for Dummies, and the Dummies series. I've always enjoyed reading those. I mean, I've learned how to do a lot of things that I didn't know how to do before by checking those out. Is it possible to learn how to be a voiceover actor by reading a book?
Like anything, that's can you be a great golfer just by reading a book? I think you got to get out there on the course or on the field or whatever the craft is. I think what we've done with the Voice Acting for Dummies book is consolidated, really a decade worth of knowledge. And I should give credit where it is due. Stephanie, my dear wife and co-founder, really, she did a lot of the heavy lifting. She'd actually written a blog for about 5 years. There was hundreds and hundreds of articles. They were very well researched and thought through. And we actually packaged those up initially into an ebook that we sold 20,000 copies of this ebook. And finally, we thought, well, we should see about getting this put together into an actual printed book. And so we approached Wiley Publishing, who's the publisher of the Dummies for Dummies series, and said, we wanted to do Voices.com for dummies. And they said, actually, you should broaden the scope of it and make it about the craft itself. And so they loved the idea, and so we actually, because we also had a sizable community that we could introduce the book to, and that this was a niche market that they had not yet covered. And so I thought it was going to be just hand off the material right to them, and they would just publish it. But they actually assigned an editor to us, and we started right from scratch, which began with the table of contents, and then filling in all the section headers, and then filling in the content. So that was a process in and of itself, but certainly very enjoyable. And I would encourage those to check that out. It's we've been able to update that and keep it fresh and current, as well as get the insights from a number of coaches, voice coaches, talent agents in New York and LA, and other working voice actors to contribute alongside us.
I've heard for many years, and I was a radio guy for a long time, so I understand why people would say this, but when somebody has a decent-sounding voice, like me or you or anybody, and somebody says, hey, you've got that voice for radio, what steps should somebody take in order to move it forward to getting onto something like Voices.com?
One of the first steps we always recommend is taking a few classes that either are done at an acting school or even improv classes, but even I would definitely say the acting element of it, because that is what it is. It's voice acting. You just do not have the benefit of a costume, makeup, and movements of your hands and body, and an audience to kind of play off of. Voice acting is challenging because it's somewhat, candidly, it's somewhat isolated. You're working on your own, and you really are trying to interpret the script to create some meaning and to create a connection with those listeners. So to be able to do that, learning from people who've done so ahead of you is a great place. If you maybe live in an area of the country where there aren't a lot of acting schools, there's a number of excellent podcasts that are out there that are specific to voiceover or voice acting. Mission Audition is a great one where auditions are actually, you can hear people auditioning for the same script, and you can hear those different interpretations, and then the client reveals who the winner was as well. So those are the type of things. I think just, like anything, if you're considering entering in a career or hobby, or maybe a side hustle, as they're known nowadays, I would just go into information mode and soak up as much as you can, and then see if you want to take that a step further by pursuing some classes, because I think that's where you'll get some personalized attention as well. David,
are you a voiceover actor?
No, goodness, I'm the engineer. I'm the wannabe Wizard of Oz behind the scenes. So no, I don't think I've ever done a voiceover that ever went to air or anything along those lines. But I certainly have an appreciation for the 30-second commercials are the easy stuff. It's the 9-hour audiobook that is like a marathon or more like an Ironman that just takes such staying power, which is a skill in and of itself.
How do we find out more about Voices.com, David?
Just visit the website. Voices.com is the address. Folks can kind of track along us on all social channels. Twitter's probably the best one, and it's simply @Voices.
And then how do we find your book?
Voice Acting for Dummies is available on, of course, Amazon. And if you're not ready to kind of dive in and order a book, our blog is an excellent source where, as I said, served as that initial inspiration, and we refresh a lot of those articles and republish them to ensure that they're up to date. So voices.com/blog would be a great source of information too.
The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast is brought to you by Orange Computer. Find them online at orangecomputerlax.com. Tell your story with microcasts by podcastforhire.com. The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast is a Podcast for Hire production.